Hi, it's Dr. Scott. I'm here to introduce the week 3 discussion on Peter Pan this time and get it rolling. Once again, I want to start by pointing out that we're dealing with another Scotsman. Just like Robert Louis Stevenson, J.M. Barrie was colonized by British literature. He's actually a Scot like me. And perhaps that accounts for some of his oddness. I'm not sure. As I pointed out in the intro video, this is a man who faced a great number of tragedies, and partly that's what I'd like us to discuss today. They include the death of his second oldest brother at the age of 14. Barrie was a little bit younger, due to an ice skating accident that Barrie himself actually witnessed. So he basically watched his brother drown and would pretend to be his brother to try to comfort his aggrieved mother, pretending to be the brother. How Peter Pan can you get, right? Later in life, he had an awkward and kind of tragic marriage that ended not quite in divorce, but in just sort of separation. Then he adopts these 5 boys that are living with this woman that he was in love with or not in love with, no one quite knows. And they become the boys to whom he begins telling the stories of Peter Pan and Neverland, but also almost embodying them for him. And yet those boys, too, were overshadowed by tragedy. One is killed in the trenches of World War I amid the gas and the shells and the mud and the stench and the filth of that greatest of wars and most tragic of wars. And another seems to have either drowned or probably committed suicide at something like the age of 21. A struggling university student never quite got his feet under him. Several biographers have suggested that he was gay and that his lover drowned with him. Whatever, maybe they were just friends. But that's the kind of tragedy that seemed to overshadow the man's life all along. I'm standing here this time in my bathrobe. I don't know if you can tell. It was my attempt at pajamas to say, well, you know, the story obviously is wonderful, and I'm ready to fly out the window, which is right over there. I'm here to point out that flying dragons from China, for example, are nothing new, and flying characters of all kinds. If you've read The Dream of the Red Chamber, a great Chinese classic novel, this, I'm not sure you can tell, is a photograph of Native Americans in California. And one of the things that gets lost in the Disney version, I think quite fortunately, is the fact that the tribes on the island of Neverland are supposed to be little Indians, awkwardly named pickaninnies, which is a racial slur of the first order describing Negro children. So much of this has been taken out. The pirates have more or less stayed in the Disney-fied version, but you may want to be on the lookout for that as you're thinking about who is J.M. Barrie and what is his life about. I'll just show you one other prop here. This is the Peter Pan Centennial Edition that I think I waved around in some previous video, read from cover to cover. It reminds me that the publication history of Peter Pan is intensely complicated. It came out first in magazines in Britain and the United States, yes. Then it was a play. Then it was a book, and there was actually a book twice. So the publication dates, it's not me being mixed up, it's that the publication dates are really complicated. Here, for example, is the Peter and Wendy version that came out, I think, in 1911, quite a few years after the play. And you can see the graphics that show how Peter Pan would have been depicted in this Edwardian era before the war. And then finally, back to the biographical elements that I wanted to highlight in this video. Here are some of these photographs of the boys that their guardian, their official guardian, Mr. Barrie, took. And again, some people find these faintly disturbing. I actually honestly find them to be completely innocent. But just as with Mr. Lewis Carroll of Alice in Wonderland fame, there's been a great deal of discussion about the meaning of these photographs, the implied eroticism or innocence or whatever of the photographs. It's kind of interesting that two of our authors were very fond of taking photographs of children, but there you have it. So, looking forward to finding out what you think is important in all this. And as soon as you've thought it through a bit, how about you jump in on the discussion? Don't forget to quote at least one of your peers. And tell me if you know any lost boys. By the way, the Peter Pan syndrome is up for grabs now, too. Thank you.